Okay, so here we are at PureSound Studios. So who are you guys? Tell us where you're located.
Okay, hi, I'm Ant, and this is
Rosie.
And we're located at level 12, 49 Bulcott Street, which is in central Wellington, just slightly out of central Wellington. We've actually been in this building for a long time, although the studio is quite new, started about 5 months ago.
So how did you start the studio?
The studio came about kind of randomly. I had my gear here and I was recording my own material. And I kind of felt like I wanted to get other people involved. I'd done some recording with Rosie as well. We had have a partnership in something, a project. And thought it would be great to bring other people in. In a lot of ways, you know, it was a way to build skills, build networks, generally create a community, a music community that that we could be involved in. Would you say that's you've been a big part of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's been up and running since May, so we've been going about 5 to 6 months, I guess. And yeah, it basically started because you had so much of your own software and music equipment and you wanted to create it into more that could benefit others, because it's such a valuable space. And yeah, there's so much you can do in the space that we're like, oh, we may as well turn this into like an actual production space for other people. And yeah, so we've made music in the past together and we thought, oh, why don't we do something like this? So yeah, we've been getting a lot of people coming through who are re-emerging or re-establishing musicians who haven't been able to finish projects in the past because it's been unaffordable, or they had life get in the way. And yeah, now it's been really cool to like help heaps of people in the Wellington and wider area get back into their music. So very rewarding stuff. Yeah,
very broad catchment in
Right.
terms of styles of music, ages. Yeah. It's really
So you guys recorded as Owls. Did you know each other
Yeah.
before then? You did that single?
No.
Is it?
No, our mothers introduced us. Obviously,
Oh, okay.
our mothers are of different ages. But yeah, that's where it came from. Yeah.
So just that common interest in music brought you together?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really interesting to see where it's come from, actually, because we met in a cafe in Wanaka.
Okay.
I was
Yeah.
down skiing. Yeah.
and I had just finished university last year and actually was doing psychology and social policy, but my passion's definitely in music.
Because you've been in Corduroy, haven't you? for
Yeah,
quite a while.
yeah.
You're originally from Dunedin?
No, I'm from Wanaka.
Okay.
Yeah, and we were a Wellington band that started in first year,
Okay.
and we're still going. And yeah, so we've been going a while. So I definitely wanted to, when I finished uni, wanted to keep doing music. And then told Anthony I was looking for work if he knew of any. And then he was like, oh, I'm actually thinking of creating a music studio. I'm definitely going to need some help. So worked out pretty well for both of us.
So who are some of the people that you've had in? I think you were saying before you've had a young guy who's been working on Ableton.
Yeah, as I say, it's a really diverse kind of group of people we've had through, from all over Wellington, all ages. So yeah, we've had a young guy who's looking to grow his skills, you know, as a way of building his educational experience. We've had a lot older people coming through, some past stars from the 90s and things like that. There's one act, Metro Sideros, which is Matt Dalzell, and that's been a really fantastic project to work with. So he was in the Male Chicks in the 90s, and he's put together an EP and basically tracking here. He's mixed elsewhere, he's mixed at Tiny Triumph, but some great tracks coming through there, really, really innovative, nice blend of genres. But yeah, there's all sorts. There's I can't talk about people without
Sure.
them authorising me, but there's one gentleman in particular who I've worked on 6 tracks with, produced to the tracks, and that's come through really well. Very, very excited by that project as well.
So is there any particular sort of specific piece of gear that you really love people to work with when they come in?
Well, part of this for me was trying to broaden my skill base as much as possible. So I wanted to have as many doors as digital audio workstations, to have as many as practical. I mean, there are some financial limits to that, but we actually have 7 digital audio workstations. So we have all the main ones such as Logic, Ableton, Pro Tools, Cubase, Reaper, Some we have better levels of skills than others. It is interesting, we seem to be focused more on Ableton and on Logic. That's typically where we end up doing most of our work. But I've recently become quite heavily invested in the Maschine ecosystem, which is a Native Instruments kind of a digital audio workstation. And I find that for song development is fantastic, very quick, very easy to use. You can move the project very easily into Logic, less easily into Ableton, but I find that in terms of working with developing songs with artists, which is something that we're doing, very efficient. But no real favourites. But one thing I would note is that we live in the box, so we don't have a lot of outboard gear. We have very high quality interfaces, Focusrite, Claret 8X, and we have very good microphones, and we have acoustically treated spaces. But pretty much everything we do is in the computer.
Okay, so your acoustically treated spaces, that's how you separate so people tracking drums or guitars or doing vocals?
Exactly, yeah. We have one principal space, which is not huge, and there'll be footage, I imagine, of it in this interview, but we use that. It's got a vocal booth, and we can set up amps in there and isolate them. But actually, we have this floor to ourselves in the evenings and in the weekends, and we make full use of this floor. We actually transform the boardroom into quite a large size drum booth, which has visual connection to the rest of the band, and we can record a live band, not with vocals, but the band playing instrumentally pretty easily. We've got 16 analog inputs into our interfaces.
So you're finding that when people come here, they're doing the whole thing here, they're doing the whole project?
Some.
They're not just tracking instruments or doing overdubs or...
It's a really diverse mix, but I think we need to be honest about what is our core, our core reason for being, and I think there's two of them. One is developing artists. So someone has an idea for a song, but they're not really sure how to take it further. We do that, but cheap tracking is another area which we use for, and we're quite happy to do that.
Tracking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, we make a good effort.
So when people come in, do you give them tips on vocals or vocal coaching or?
Yeah, when people, they'll be sitting in the vocal booth in the studio room, and I can be sitting here and give them some tips on, how to better, maximise their sound, or how to sing more how the way they're wanting to sing. So, I think that's where I would come in more on the engineering and recording side of things, will definitely be from my personal experience as a vocalist, helping them, I guess, produce the sound they're wanting to, and just guide them and give them just some tips and stuff. But I can do the vocal tracking, and then Anthony's our main engineer. So in the vocal booth, usually the lights are off, so it's very atmospheric with all the fairy lights and the warm lighting. We've got a nice microphone here. This can open up with Logic Pro, and then you can see what you're recording as you go, and kind of go back, start again. So it's quite an easy setup between the studio room and the control booth.
So how do you think advances in technology have helped setups such as yours?
Well, clearly the cost of setting up a studio is so much less than it used to be. That being said, to get to the level we are at, we have spent quite a lot of money. It's definitely not cheap, but it's still a fraction of what it used to be. I think the level of studio we have here in terms of multi-tracking, effects, etc. 15 to 20 years ago would have been a couple of $1 million studio, and now it's down to a lot less than that. But things like microphones, stands, there's all sorts of things you have to spend money on that you don't think about when you set this thing up. And I also wanted to have a good range of instruments, good quality instruments, not necessarily the best, but good quality. So that's cost quite a bit as well.
Just about the plugins, the amount of...
Yeah, so I have spent an extraordinary amount of money on plugins. I think it's a disease, but I love spending money on plugins, and I'm a sucker for the marketing, which means that the clients can enjoy a wide variety of plugins. But I'm also a huge fan of the Native Instruments habitat or environment, what do you want to call it? That's Maschine, Tractor, Control, and
You've got every extension on Maschine.
So I've got all of the expansions for Maschine. Also, yes, Spitfire Audio is amazing. So I'm a huge fan of Spitfire Audio. If you don't know who they are, they're a UK-based, London-based outfit that do exquisite sampling of orchestral instruments, and I think they're probably the best in the world at what they do. And I have huge number of their software packages, which are extraordinarily realistic.
Cool. So you were telling us a bit before we started that your background was in finance. So this is a sort of pretty big pivot to kind of focusing on music.
Yeah,
so sort of talk a bit about kind of what prompted you to do that? Or?
Well, finance is still a part of my life, and it's investment as opposed to finance. And I was actually a long time ago, as you can tell, in bands and things like that. And
you had a record deal in the 90s or something?
In the 80s.
Okay.
And we won't talk about what happened to that. But basically it all faded after that, and I got into trading financial markets, which I was fascinated by. And I still remain fascinated by them, but actually that's kind of evolved away from the traditional financial markets more towards derivatives and also cryptocurrency as well. So there's a side business, well, it's not really a side business, it's actually a kind of core business, which is associated with the studio, which is Pure Capital, which is a consultancy business or advisory business based on investing in a range of financial instruments.
Okay, so was there a particular sort of point where you decided that you kind of shift back to music? Was it kind of like a light moment or
it was. The last 3 years has been a big shift. It's been a big shift in the way I see the world, and a lot going on. And I made a commitment to being a musical artist. That's I'm relatively mature in years, and I want to do something good with those years.
Cool. And you just put out a WEP. You want to?
Yeah. So it's a lo-fi, retro lo-fi beats EP.
Okay.
I did a DJ course, and I actually developed the tracks for that course because I was going to do a set, and I have done that set since. So it really just came from that, put together very quickly. It's really a production job as opposed to a writing job. There's quite a lot of use of loops, but I did add a lot of arrangements and things like that. But that seems to be doing quite nicely at the moment, just a little bit of interest internationally. I've got a few interviews coming through, a few blogs and things like that. But the other thing I've released is I have a range of artistic identities, and one of them is called LearningToDive, and that's kind of an 80s retro, kind of post-punk, 80s pop type thing, and just launched a single on Friday called High and Dry, and I've got another one coming out called Falling Leaves. Really goes back to the 1980s, these tracks, sort of Bowie, a lot of those early 80s tracks. So that's one other thing. I also got another identity called Haikyo, which is where I'm putting my ambient cinematic music as well. That's got a release coming through in mid-December.
Cool. And the trip-hop duo you're in, Arles, you put out a single earlier in the year. Was it last year?
August last year.
Last year, yeah. They got quite good sort of press overseas. It's sort of a trip-hop revival.
Yeah.
And you recorded it in Norway, is that famous studio?
Yeah, well, in fact, I did the Learning to Dive material there as well. Okay. We recorded one track for Arles in Norway. So it was mainly Learning to Dive. But that Norwegian experience was just off the planet. It was just so fantastic. If you can imagine a beautifully put together studio with all the best equipment at the end of a fjord on an island. And we were there in August, and it was 25, 26 degrees Celsius. So we're swimming in crystal clear water with white sand beaches. Amazing.
And going to record music.
And recording music, yeah.
And that was towards an EP, wasn't it? And
it was all Anthony's music, yeah.
So the Arles music, Arles, so that's the Meld EP.
Yeah.
So we're looking to release that next year. We've got a few more tracks to come from that. But that's a one-off project.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So you've got an identity as Alba Rose as well. Can you tell us a bit about that, and if you have anything coming on?
Yeah, I've been, over the last couple of months, working on the live side of things. So have some songs that I'm now performing live with a band, which is really exciting. And I was actually here about a month ago now. Oh, that's gone fast. Tracking some of the songs. So I've got 3 songs I've now started tracking, and been super busy with Corduroy. So yeah, hopefully over the summer period I'll be able to keep developing those songs and bring out some music for that soon. But yeah, just working on like more the live side of things and performing with them, which is fun.
Some great tracks there.
So what are you guys' thoughts on sort of streaming and essentially the different way that people access music now? Is it much harder for people to actually get any traction? And
I think it's definitely harder to get attraction because availability to like software and platforms is just like anyone can basically do it. So there's so much music coming out every single day that like for your music to stand out, it really needs to pop or be really pushed by, I guess, a lot of time and a lot of money or a label or so it's definitely harder to get noticed, I think.
You don't really engage in any sort of promotional aspects of music?
Well, we've actually been doing a lot of
Yeah, we
promotion.
have. And it's actually an area that we're really enjoying.
Okay.
You have to be realistic. There's a huge volume of music coming through. But there's a lot of resources out there for artists to understand how to build their profile. I mean, there is no shortcuts unless you're like one of the very well-funded artists like Benny, who's supremely talented. It's you're going to really struggle to have a quick surge, but you can build a base over time. Okay. And what's very important, there's a lot of YouTube videos you can watch and some very good ones. And what comes through consistently is it's about building fans, loyal fans. So you may only start with 5 fans, but you work on building these fans because those fans are your advocates, and that's the way to build, a base going forward. And before I did this, I had kind of what got me into doing this again is I had this blog, NZ Music for You, which I posted on Facebook as well, links to tracks I liked. And what I realised from that experience, which was over like 5 years or so, was that you can build a career as a musician if you do a few things well. So one is networking. It's really important. Obviously, you've got to be talented to some degree, a wide variety of skills, and the ability to accept, that your career will be very diverse and not a straight line. But I've seen some of those people come through, and I've been so impressed by how well they've done. And and there's actually people in their 40s who've built quite solid careers, through doing this kind of thing. Yeah,
I think it does get a lot more competitive these days, though. I think, given like the world situation with COVID, like you can't make a lot of money but by streaming and online platforms alone. Like most music and the money in music comes from like touring or merch or live shows and performances, but then that's kind of halted a bit when it comes to international side of things. So I think like it's okay to build a fan base and following, but when it actually comes to like is your income, that's where it gets a bit harder these days because it's definitely harder to get those online streams when it's 0.01% from a Spotify stream, for instance. Yeah.
I think one of the lessons that's come through recently as well is that looking for a record deal is not the thing it used to be. Because essentially big record labels or record companies are venture capital companies. And the economics have changed a lot. And because they don't get the money out of the streaming that they used to, or out of sort of selling CDs, etc., they're taking a lot more of the overall artist's revenue, such as merch, live, etc. And you can end up locked up in a label deal, and if your advocate within the label has lost interest or departed, you can be stuck with a deal doing nothing, And so I think the case for being an independent now is pretty strong. There's so many resources out there. There's kind of hybrid models for funding artists coming through and things like that. I think that that's the way you need to think. As Rosie's saying, it's merch and live, but you need to try and hold as much of that as possible, not sell it.
High and dry. High and dry.
Leave you high and dry.
High and dry.
sham, a hollow man, a cashing cow, leave you high and dry, leave you high and dry, high and dry.
Yeah. Okay, so do you want to just tell us some of the actual rates you charge for people coming in?
Yeah, so it's $25 an hour plus GST, but as of next year that's going to be going up to $33 plus GST, so still super affordable, but yeah, it just takes a lot of time to do everything, and yeah, we've actually got some good business coming in now, so people,
Cool.
we know people are wanting to come into the studio and they're wanting to pay that bit extra, so
So you're
Worth
getting
it.
sort of repeat customers who
Yeah.
are getting new
Absolutely,
people, or
yeah.
a mix of both?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, one other thing I would note is that we do have some discounts for students, etc. Also, if someone's going to book a whole lot of time, then
Yeah, yeah. You got kind of discount rates.
yeah.
yeah, and we do bookings in 5-hour booking blocks minimum, so usually that takes up a weekend. Otherwise, if it's like a mixing session or a vocals only package, that can be in 3 hours, and then that's $99 plus GST. So yeah,
Cool.
that's when we have vocalists or people wanting to just come in and mix, but you predominantly do the mixing yourself, don't you?
Mm.
So then that would happen on the weeknights. Yeah.
So this is a bit of an open question, but why should people consider a setup such as yours over a home studio they can create themselves?
I like to say we're kind of like a home studio on steroids, because
Okay, that's really good.
yeah, we take this, you know, basically to the point we have the ultimate home studio in a way.
Yeah.